Greetings, my dear brothers and sisters. Today, on Holy Thursday, we begin the Triduum, the three important days, most important days of the Holy Week. Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Saturday with the Easter Vigil. You may follow the liturgies in EWTN, and our Bishop, His Excellency Herbert A. Bevard, will be celebrating these liturgies from our Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul. We thank Jesus for giving us the Eucharist and holy orders during the Last Supper. These two sacraments are so closely linked because without the priesthood, we would have no Eucharist. Pope St. John Paul II, in his letter to priests for Holy Thursday in the year 2004, says, "At the Last Supper, we were born as priests." Then he continues to write about the connection between the priesthood and the Eucharist. We were born from the Eucharist. If we can truly say that the whole Church lives from the Eucharist, we can say the same thing about the ministerial priesthood. It is born, lives, works, and bears fruit, the Eucharistia. There can be no Eucharist without the priesthood, just as there can be no priesthood without the Eucharist. You see priests involved in many different activities. No matter what type of good work a priest does, the high point of the priest's ministry is celebrating the Eucharist. It is the most important moment of the day for the priest. And so St. John Paul II writes, "The ordained ministry enables the priest to act in persona Christi and culminates in the moment when he consecrates the bread and wine, repeating the actions and words of Jesus during the Last Supper." St. John Paul II reminds us of the importance to pray for vocations so that priests may never be lacking to the Church. This reminds us of the huge sacrifices that some people down through the history of the Church have made to protect priests during times when they were endangered by anti-Catholic laws. A recent poll suggests that too few Catholics believe in the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. So those of us who do believe have a great task to impart the knowledge and spread the faith. But there are many accounts of Catholics who knew with such certainty that Jesus Christ is truly present in the Blessed Sacrament, that they cherished the opportunity to receive him in the Eucharist. Others faced danger to be with him, and there are those who even died rather than let the Blessed Sacrament fall into the wrong hands. I will share just 6 names and a brief excerpt of their stories. Carlos Acutis was an Italian Roman Catholic teenager. He was best known for documenting Eucharistic miracles around the world and cataloging them onto a website that he himself created in the months before his death from leukemia on October 12, 2006, at the age of 15. He was noted for his cheerfulness and for his computer skills, as well as for his deep devotion to the Eucharist, which became a core theme of his life. Tarcisius was a young boy during one of the fierce 3rd century Roman persecutions, probably during the reign of Emperor Valerian. One day, he was entrusted with the task of bringing the Eucharist to condemned Christians in prison. He preferred death at the hands of a mob rather than deliver to them the Blessed Sacrament which he was carrying. Father Pedro Maldonado was a great priest in Chihuahua during the anti-Catholic persecution, helping prepare children for their first communion and serving the poor. On February 10, 1937, which was Ash Wednesday, drunken men with guns came into his church, threatening to arrest him. The priest quickly grabbed the church's pyx of consecrated hosts before the thugs dragged him by the hair out into the street. The gang began to beat Father Pedro, but the priest held his pyx tightly until a direct blow knocked it loose. The host spilled on the ground, and one of the thugs shoved them into the priest's mouth, sneering, "Eat this, your last communion." The priest did just that, and he stayed alive until the following day when he died in a hospital. Many of us in America do holy hours because of an anonymous Chinese girl whose story inspired the world in the year 1900. The Boxer Rebellion in China sought to expel all Western influence from the country, including Catholicism. A parish priest told the tale of what happened when his church was attacked. A girl hid in the back when he was arrested, and she watched soldiers pull out the church's tabernacle, dropping 32 consecrated hosts onto the ground. That night, she sneaked back into the church, spent time in silent adoration, and then bowed down to the ground and took one of the hosts onto her tongue. She did the same thing 32 nights in a row until the hosts were all consumed. After she received the last one, she was caught by a soldier and she was beaten to death. Archbishop Fulton Sheen said that hearing the story convinced him to do a daily holy hour. Many people were inspired by Fulton Sheen's talk to do the same, including Bishop James Conley in Lincoln, Nebraska, and among many, many others, the reporter of this story, Tom Hoops, a writer in residence at Benedictine College in Kansas. Paul Comtois ran into a fire in 1966. Is your faith in the Eucharist strong enough that you would rush in a burning room to save it? Paul Comtois was a lieutenant governor of Quebec. A devout Catholic, he said the rosary daily with his wife and 5 children. The family lived in an official residence where they got the very rare permission to have the Blessed Sacrament reserved in a tabernacle for the family's private worship. His daughter said of him, when he finally was given this permission, it was on condition that he be personally responsible for its safe and proper keeping. And my father was a man who lived up to his obligations at all costs. On midnight of February 21, 1966, a fire swept through his house. The father got his family safely out, then went back in for the Blessed Sacrament. His body was found badly burned, but still safely guarding the pyx containing the hosts. Margaret Middleton was born in York, England, around 1556. Queen Elizabeth I came to the throne in 1558, and she soon threatened to destroy the Catholic Church. The law clearly stated that the Mass was outlawed, and the whole population was ordered to attend the new Protestant services. On March 14, Margaret was brought before the judges in Common Hall in York. This involved the accused lying naked on the stone floor of an underground cell with a door laid over them and heavy stones piled on the door. Further weights were piled on the door until the accused was crushed to death. 10 days later, on March 25, 1586, she was executed by crushing. Before her execution, she was asked to pray for the Queen, and she did pray for the Queen. She prayed that the Queen would become a Catholic. The executioners placed the board upon her and the huge stones on top. Within a quarter of an hour, she was dead. It was Good Friday. She was left beneath the board from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, and they buried her body in waste ground, hoping it would never be found again. Pope Paul VI canonized her in 1970 and gave her the title Pearl of York. Her home, 26 des Champs in York, has become a place of pilgrimage, visited by thousands each year. She is called a martyr of the Eucharist because she was executed for protecting priests and making it possible for them to celebrate Mass. It is through the faith and courage of people like Margaret in this country that we are able to celebrate the Eucharist any and every day. Both the Eucharist and the priesthood were born during the Last Supper. Today we thank Jesus for giving us the Eucharist and the priesthood during the Last Supper. Again, as St. John Paul II wrote, before this extraordinary reality, we find ourselves amazed and overwhelmed. So deep is the humility by which God stoops in order to unite himself to man. If we feel moved before the Christmas crib when we contemplate the incarnation of the Word of God, what must we feel before the altar where, by the poor hands of the priest, Christ makes his sacrifice present in time? We can only fall to our knees and silently adore this supreme mystery of faith. God bless you.